So we're going to go the top 5 small school sleepers brought to you by Emory Hunt. At the very top of this list, quarterback Cephas Johnson III out of southeastern Louisiana. You're a Louisiana guy. I don't know if you're biased. Tell us a little about Cephas Johnson.
Not biased at all, but I was shocked at how tall he measured. He measured in at a legit 6'6", 225 pounds. Saw him at the College Gridiron Showcase. He also played a little wide receiver at Southeastern Louisiana. He worked out as a receiver there at the Gridiron Showcase, but primarily was a quarterback, got better each and every rep he threw the football. And was also impressive about him is that he played at South Alabama, transferred to Southeastern Louisiana, threw the football extremely well. They ran a dual quarterback system, over 500 yards rushing on the ground this year, 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He is someone that reminds me a lot of what Cordell Stewart brought to the table when he was coming out of Colorado. I was fascinated how well he threw the football in comparison to the other prospects that were there at the position.
Rick, let me ask you quickly, because this is Emory's second. We don't want to steal too much time from it. But when you're watching small school guys, what's the most important thing they have to do to differentiate themselves?
Well, they better stick out, especially at that level. And it sounds like his size, his speed, his athleticism all stuck out when you did evaluate him. Now it's an opportunity for him. I don't know if he's at the combine or not, but he will have a lot of guys down there working out in his pro day and to determine, and I don't know if you said they did some receiver with him as well. Do you think he would be a legit quarterback, or do you think people are looking at him as an athlete?
Well, that's the funny part, because I watched him throw the football. I'm like, okay, he's throwing it real nice. Then he goes out there and runs a route. He beats a guy deep down the field and gets vertical, but then he goes back to quarterback, and he outperformed the other quarterbacks that were there. So you start to see teams start to raise their eyebrows and, hey, man, maybe this guy's a developmental guy, kind of like what the Steelers did last year when they brought in Chris Oldokin in the 7th round, work with him and try to groom him and develop him, because we know what the quarterback position looks like nowadays. You need guys that can do more than one thing.
So let me ask you about Johnson. I don't know if he'll get drafted, and that's the hit or miss situation when you're talking about small school guys. Do you have an idea where you might think he should end up, given what you've seen from him?
I don't want to name the team that had a lot of interest in him at the College Gridiron Showcase, but it wouldn't shock me to see him end up in the AFC. I'll put it that way. With a lot of guys that were like, hey, man, this guy fits our mold, fits our prototype, and this is what we want at the position. So talking a little bit more to coaches down there at Southeastern Louisiana, he's expected to run in the 4.4s. So you got 6'6",
that's bold,
225, running in the 4.4s. There's a lot to work with Cephas Johnson III.
And, Rick, you would probably admit that sometimes it's better for young men like this to go as priority free agents as opposed to being 7th-round picks, because they can choose where they want to go?
Right, because at the draft, and we had the philosophy, and especially during the COVID years, that why we wanted all those 6th and 7th-round picks. I think one year I had 4 or 5 7th-round picks. We didn't want to go and compete with guys like this in free agency, because right after the draft, it's mad chaos. You got 31 teams, and this kid here will have 32 teams calling, trying to recruit the kid. You do the recruiting process even before the draft. You have your coaches calling the kid. You know, when teams bring these guys in on what they call the top 30 visits, it's not the top 30 players. It's guys like this who they want to recruit, show what the, meet with the coaches. Coaches get to know who they are, want to show them what the facility is. It's like college recruiting. But if I'm a player, I would not want to get drafted in the 7th round. I'd rather go into free agency, college free agency, because a lot of times what's happening now is that they're guaranteeing a lot of those base salaries. So you actually may be making more money as a college free agent than potentially as a draft pick.
All right, do you want to quickly hit on one more player on this list that you want to make note of?
Yeah, listen, we're in Indianapolis. The running back, Toriano Clinton of the University of Indianapolis, right up the street. All-time leading rusher with 4,500 yards rushing. Leads the school in touchdowns on the ground with 48. He is also someone that can return kicks. He's 5'8", about 190 pounds. Well-built guy. He's short, not small. But he also averaged 30 yards a kickoff return and 28 yards a punt return last season. So he does special team work. That's probably going to be the fastest way he'll get on the field. He was outstanding. And Danny Kittner out of University of Mary, Division II program, over 1,700 yards receiving last year. He was another one at the College Gridiron Showcase that had a particular AFC team looking at his services and put everything down when it was his turn to go in one-on-ones, because he was doing such a great job down there in Fort Worth.
And that's why Emory Hunt knows everyone on planet Earth that plays football, Rick. All right, let's get to your top 3 combine sleepers, a little more well-known names than what Emory does his deep dives on.
And I admire you for going down there and digging those guys, because that's what a lot of scouts do.
Right.
And to go and find guys like that, that's how we found a lot of our guys. And I wish I could say I was the one down there digging.
You could say
but
that.
it goes down to the college scouts. It goes down to analytics. They'll put these guys through the test to see if they rise from the rest of the college free agents. And you can get some great players when you go out and do the things that you just did.
I appreciate that. Listen, there was guys that just do a lot down there, and the return game is big for these guys that are coming from these small schools.
Yeah, Rick isn't big on compliments, so that says a lot. All right, Rick, give me one. The one you want to highlight out of your 3 combine sleepers. Who's your guy?
Yeah, no, I was very excited about Trey Palmer, the receiver from Nebraska, who I think is one of the fastest receivers in this draft class. Loved Tank Bigsby when I went and looked at him on tape, but the guy I really want to hone in on is Deonte Banks. He's the one that I was shocked that there's not a lot of buzz on him coming into the draft and coming into this combine, but I think after he performs here, he's going to be in the top of the corner draft class. There's 5 or 6 guys I think can go in the first round, and I think he is going to put his way in there. As you can see, when you watch the tape on him, he has great ball skills. He can play in both man and zone coverage. He can run with receivers when he's stretched down the field. He knows how to find the ball. He's a big-time hitter. He can blitz off the edge. So there's not a lot of holes in this guy's game, maybe some technical things that he's going to work on. But when coaches and scouts see this guy, the way he hits, the way he can cover, can fit in any scheme, he's going to be one of the top corners in this year's draft class.
I love Deonte Banks. I've had him going in some of my first-round mocks, and I think he's well-deserving. When we look at my list of 3 combine sleepers, it's equally as exciting, maybe even more exciting than Rick's list. But
probably not, but go ahead.
I'll let you decide. It starts with Darius Rush. We saw him,
him
at the Senior Bowl. Had a great week at the Senior Bowl. Rashawn Johnson, Sam Laporta is a fun tight end out of Iowa that's not getting a lot of buzz right now. But I'm going to focus on Rashawn Johnson, the running back out of Texas, because when we talk about Texas running backs in this 2022 season, it's Bijan Robinson. The great thing about Rashawn Johnson, low mileage, fantastic special teams player.
Can you explain what low mileage is so everybody listening to this podcast understands that?
Thank you. That's something your brother would have said as well. It means he hasn't taken a lot of snaps because a lot of the snaps went to Bijan Robinson. So he hasn't carried the ball. He hasn't taken a ton of hits against top-flight Division I competition. But when you see him play, he is so quick in the hole, one cut and go. He is thick. He's going to run through arm tackles all day long. I think he's going to run really well here this week as well. And I mentioned the special teams that he adds, and that's a component that a lot of times fans don't think about, Rick, but you know how incredibly important it is when you draft guys to help out. They have to be able to place teams unless they're a starter, and I think that Rashawn Johnson gives you all this. And Emory's a running back. Emory, you like Rashawn?
Yeah, I like him, man. And here's the thing. You can get caught up in a situation where you're used to being the number 2 guy.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to be at the NFL level. Some teams may project him to be a starter. He may not be suited for that role because he spent so much time being a complimentary guy, and that's where he probably has to be.
That's one of the questions that he will be asked during this interview process. If we draft you, and we're going to have to draft you high, and you were a backup your whole career, why is it so important for you to become a starter? And it'll be interesting to see how he responds to that. But if he has any type of competitiveness to him, he's probably going to want to say, I want to be the man. I finally want to get my opportunity to show that I'm one of the top running backs in this class.
Because you had some of that situation with Lindell White and Reggie Bush.
Brian Robinson last year.
Exactly. It works
I
out
could
well
go
for both
back
of them.
to back in the day when Emmitt Smith came out, or Thurman did when he came out of Oklahoma State. Guess who his backup running back was?
Barry Sanders.
Barry
It
Sanders.
was Barry. At the same time frame. By the way, Debo, the producer, makes note, Rashawn also had 56 catches last season and just 60 for Bijan. So he also adds that element in the pass game as well. And trying to think.
Well, the one thing just to point out about him as well, he did kickoff returns, and he's a big back with speed that we saw on the clips that can do that. And the thing that surprised me the most for an offensive guy, they had him running down on kickoff coverage. And he made 2 or 3 hits as a covering on kickoffs to say, this guy's just a good football player.
And that gets your attention, too.
Oh, yeah.
When you're in the front office, not necessarily when you're a fan and you see the touchdown runs, you need to be able to play all 3 phases. And Rashawn Johnson checks all those boxes and makes your life easier as a coach or an evaluator when you're drafting that young man.
And especially if you're going to be a backup, and backups have to be able to play on special teams.
Right.
And most of the time you're going to find them in the secondary or at the linebacker. But when you can find offensive guys that can help you on special teams, that's how Adam Thielen made our roster. He wasn't a receiver at the time. He just played so well on special teams. If they can play well on special teams, especially as a young guy, and keep developing, that usually was a pretty good indicator that they're going to be a good player at their position.